The monitors had seen reality break before. Crisis on Infinite Earths. Flashpoint. Doomsday Clock. Each event had been violent, but comprehensible. There had always been a source, a point of intervention. This was different. The distortion appeared in the spaces between spaces in the infrastructure holding the 52 Earths together. The monitors called it null time residue. Not an entity, not an invasion. Accumulated scar tissue from every retcon, every timeline correction, every desperate attempt to keep the multiverse coherent. Reality had been rewritten too many times. The universe no longer agreed with itself. In the watchtower, Batman reviewed the data. Every scan returned the same result: inconsistency, not absence. Inconsistency. It's spreading, Superman said. Earth hung below them, fragile. 3 cities reported temporal anomalies. People remembering events that never happened. The Speed Force is destabilizing, Flash added, his voice tight. Wonder Woman's hand rested on the hilt of her sword. She had faced gods, demons, creatures from outside creation. This felt worse than any of them. Can it be fought? Batman didn't answer immediately. The question assumed a battle, assumed an opponent. He pulled up another screen showing the monitor's latest transmission. Their message was brief, clinical, and deeply concerning. This is not an attack. This is consequence. Martian Manhunter spoke from his position at the far console, his voice measured. I attempted to reach the Spectre. The spirit of vengeance should be able to address a threat to cosmic order. Attempted. Superman turned. He approached the distortion and lost cohesion. Without sin to judge, without will to punish, he had no framework to exist within. The Spectre needs defined morality to function. This offers none. The room fell silent. If the Spectre, one of the most powerful entities in creation, couldn't engage with this threat, what could the Justice League do? Flash broke the quiet, his words coming faster as the implications settled. So, we're dealing with something that doesn't follow any rules we understand. No villain to punch, no device to destroy, no timeline to fix. It's just the universe eating itself because we've bent it too many times. Essentially, Batman confirmed. His jaw tightened. This was the scenario he feared most. A problem without solution, only management. And management required understanding they didn't have. We need to contain it, Superman said. Keep it from spreading. Batman pulled up projections. Red zones expanded across holographic Earth. Containment requires physically anchoring the timeline. Someone has to be there. We all go, Wonder Woman said. They deployed within minutes. Superman to Metropolis, Wonder Woman to Washington, Flash to Central City, Batman to Gotham. There's something else. Martian Manhunter's telepathic presence brushed against their minds, carrying data too complex for words. Images flickered through their consciousness, fractured timelines, overlapping histories, moments where cause and effect ran backwards. Flash saw himself aging and de-aging simultaneously. Wonder Woman witnessed Themyscira existing in 3 different temporal states at once. Superman felt 4 seconds of his personal timeline simply erased, as if he had never existed during that span. Batman saw all of it and understood. It doesn't destroy. It makes inconsistent. Anything caught in the distortion experiences all possible versions of itself at once, until the contradictions become unsustainable. Then we move now. Superman said, his cape already billowing as he prepared for flight. Before it reaches civilian populations, they deployed within minutes. Superman to Metropolis, Wonder Woman to Washington, Flash to Central City. Batman remained in Gotham, the city he knew best, the city whose shadows he had mapped for decades. If anywhere needed a constant presence, an anchor to reality, it was here. The Batmobile cut through streets that flickered between past and present. Buildings stood tall, then ruined, then never built. Batman switched to manual navigation. The distortion centered over Crime Alley. The place where his world had first broken now served as reality's focal point. He exited the vehicle and felt wrong, not pain, wrongness, like existing in a sentence without grammar. The null time residue had no form. It was absence itself, the space where continuity had surrendered. Batman deployed every countermeasure. Quantum stabilizers, temporal anchors, none worked. For the first time in years, Batman felt genuinely uncertain. Not about his methods, not about his planning, about whether methods and planning could matter against something that rejected the very concept of consistent cause and effect. His communicator crackled. "It touched me," Superman said, strained. 4 seconds. I didn't exist. "Stuck Bessamim," Flash reported. "Speed Force is looping. I'm running forward and backward simultaneously." Wonder Woman's voice followed. My sword redirected into Themyscira's history. I nearly erased my homeland. The Justice League was failing. Not from lack of power. They were trying to fight something that wasn't a fight. Batman reached out telepathically. "Joan, analyze it." Not as a threat, as a phenomenon. Martian Manhunter's response carried weight. "It's not destroying the world. It's making the world unable to remember what it is." The monitors sent their final transmission. "This phenomenon consumes order itself. We cannot intervene. You are on your own." Batman looked up at the sky above Gotham, at the stars that flickered between existence and memory, and realized they were facing something unprecedented. Something that all their experience, all their power, all their heroism might not be enough to stop. The null time residue expanded. Reality continued to disagree with itself. And somewhere in the spaces between universes, in a place the monitors had once cataloged as statistically unstable, but ultimately harmless, something else was beginning to notice. The error in DC's multiverse was about to encounter a different kind of anomaly entirely. Superman hit the distortion at full speed. 20 years of protecting Earth had taught him that momentum solved most problems. Apply enough force and physics would cooperate. Physics did not cooperate. He didn't bounce off, didn't pass through. For exactly 4 seconds, Clark Kent simply wasn't. No pain, no awareness. Just a gap in his existence like missing pages. When he reformed, gasping, he was 3 blocks away and couldn't remember how. The wave pulsed outward, indifferent. Metropolis flickered. Buildings stood in different stages of completion. Some wore scars from battles he remembered. Others showed damage from conflicts that had never occurred. A skyscraper phased between 3 architectural styles, unable to settle. "Report," Batman said over the comm. Direct contact failed. Erased me from causality temporarily. Trying containment. He flew higher, scanning. X-ray vision revealed nothing. Heat vision detected no energy. Super hearing picked up only screams of a city coming apart. Below, people wandered the streets they both recognized and didn't. A woman stood paralyzed, watching her child exist in 3 ages simultaneously. Superman descended, trying to help. To anchor them through his presence, his certainty. It wasn't enough. The moment he touched the woman's shoulder, her timeline split further. He saw her as she had been, might have been. All versions equally real. All screaming. He pulled back, horrified. His attempt to stabilize had made things worse. In Central City, Flash ran. He'd always been able to outrun problems. Outrun death entropy, the end of everything. The Speed Force was his understanding of motion in a universe governed by time. But time wasn't governing anymore. Barry Allen accelerated, trying to phase through the disturbance. Instead, he ran in every direction at once. Forward into his future. Backward into memories, sideways into pruned timelines. He was 23 again. Then 40, elderly, unborn, dead, alive. The Speed Force couldn't decide which version to anchor, because the universe couldn't decide which Barry Allen should exist. "I can't stop," he said, younger and older simultaneously. If I stop, I don't know which age I'll be. Wonder Woman stood where the Washington Monument flickered through states of existence. She drew her sword, the god-killer divine steel forged to cut anything. The blade bit into the chaos, and for a moment she thought it would work. Then the cut redirected, not into the present, into history. She felt the blade slice backward through time, aimed at Themyscira's founding. One wrong move, and she would erase her people from existence. Diana froze, holding perfect stillness. Couldn't advance. Couldn't retreat. "I'm locked," she said quietly. "The distortion is using my weapon against my homeland's past." In Gotham, Batman calculated. When heroism failed, he analyzed. Found angles no one else could see, except there was no angle. Quantum stabilizers deployed throughout Crime Alley devices designed to lock space-time into coherent states. They'd worked against Darkseid's reality warping, against Brainiac's temporal weapons. They worked for 7 seconds. Then the null time adapted. Not consciously. It simply existed in a way that made the stabilizers irrelevant. Error codes that shouldn't be possible. Batman tried mapping it instead. Understand the pattern. Predict expansion. He mapped for 2 minutes before the realization hit. There was no pattern. Patterns required rules. This wasn't chaos. It was multiplicity. The universe trying to exist in every configuration at once. His gauntlet computer froze, overwhelmed. Bruce Wayne stood in Crime Alley, surrounded by flickering ghosts of every version of this place, and acknowledged a truth he'd spent his career denying. Some problems couldn't be solved by preparation. Martian Manhunter observed from the watchtower, his consciousness spread across multiple vantage points simultaneously. He saw what his teammates couldn't, saw the whole picture. The Justice League was doing everything right. Superman's courage, Flash's determination, Wonder Woman's warrior instinct, Batman's strategic brilliance. Every response was textbook heroism. Save the innocent. Contain the threat, find the weakness, exploit it. But the null time residue had no weakness to exploit. It wasn't attacking. It was existing. And its existence contradicted the rules that made heroism functional. He reached out telepathically, connecting all of them. "We need to reconsider our approach. We're containment," Batman said flatly. Not offense. The plan was never to defeat this directly. "The containment is failing," Superman admitted. The words came hard. "Every time I try to stabilize someone, their timeline fractures further. I'm making it worse." "Same here," Flash reported. His voice strained from running through impossible chronologies. "The Speed Force is feeding it somehow. My presence accelerates the temporal breakdown." Wonder Woman's contribution was silence. She remained frozen, holding her blade away from history's throat. Jones synthesized their reports, his vast Martian intellect processing variables that would overwhelm human minds. The conclusion formed slowly, reluctantly, but with absolute certainty. "We cannot win this by being heroes," he said. "The framework of heroism requires clear opposition, requires evil to fight injustice, to correct victims to save. This offers none of those structures. It simply makes the concept of structure impossible." Batman's jaw tightened. "Then what do we do?" Before John could answer, the null time residue expanded again. Not violently, just persistently spreading through the fabric of prime Earth like water through paper. 3 cities became 5. 5 became 8. In Metropolis, Superman watched a child phase between existence and non-existence, and felt helpless in a way that kryptonite had never made him feel. In Central City, Flash ran faster, knowing it wouldn't help, unable to stop trying. In Washington, Wonder Woman held her sword at exactly the wrong angle to save the world. In Gotham, Batman ran one more calculation and got one more impossible answer. And in the Watchtower, Martian Manhunter felt the disturbance spread beyond Earth, touching the edges of the multiverse itself. The monitors had been right to abandon this. The Spectre had been right to dissolve rather than engage. This wasn't a crisis that heroes could resolve. It was the consequence of every crisis that had come before. And the Justice League, for all their power and nobility and determination, were trying to fix a broken universe using the same methods that had broken it in the first place. The error was spreading. And somewhere in the spaces between realities where the monitors no longer looked something else was beginning to stir. Something that had never learned the rules the Justice League lived by. Something that wouldn't need to break those rules because it had never acknowledged them at all. The monitors had files on every observable universe. Universe X7721 had been flagged once. The notation read, "Statistically unstable. Physics inconsistent. Recommend observation only. Harmless anomaly." That assessment had never been updated. The monitors had larger concerns than a universe where power scaling had no ceiling, where individuals exceeded theoretical limits, where something called a limiter governed potential until it didn't. A statistical oddity, nothing more. Until the null time residue reached it. In City Z, Saitama finished his daily routine. 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, 10-kilometer run. The same regimen for 3 years long after it stopped being difficult. He stood in his apartment staring at the calendar. Tuesday. Grocery day. Supermarket discounts. Then he felt it. Not a sound. Not a sensation. Like the moment before a sneeze that never comes. An itch in a place that shouldn't itch. Wrongness his body recognized before his mind could name it. Saitama frowned, looking around. Cracked ceiling, flickering light, stack of manga. Nothing out of place. The feeling persisted. He walked to the window. City Z looked normal. Buildings intact, people busy. No monsters, no invasions. Just an ordinary afternoon. But something was off. Saitama had spent 3 years being the strongest thing alive. 3 years where nothing could hurt him, challenge him, make him feel actual combat. His body had become a perfect instrument with no worthy opponent. That instrument was telling him something was wrong. Not dangerous, just wrong. Maybe hunger. He'd skipped breakfast. The wrongness intensified. This wasn't hunger. This was the same instinct that warned when monsters attacked from behind, when villains hid in shadows when reality was about to get weird. He'd learned to trust it. Across Universe X7721, the null time residue made contact. It encountered a reality where power levels were suggestions, not limits. Where training broke biological laws. Where a man became strong enough to shatter causality through persistent effort and refusal to acknowledge impossibility. The residue tried to synchronize. Tried to force City Z into every configuration at once, make heroes and monsters phase between contradictory states. The universe resisted, not through cosmic entities. It resisted because its fundamental nature was already incompatible with consistent logic. In DC, power came from sources: Kryptonian biology, speed force, divine heritage. Each hero had an origin, a framework rules. Here a man became omnipotent through push-ups. The residue designed to exploit DC's overcorrected reality encountered a world that never bothered with corrections. No retcons to feed on. No timeline adjustments. No desperate attempts at coherent continuity. Just a universe that let people be as strong as they trained to be. The contact created interference. Static between worlds. The residue couldn't consume this place. Couldn't ignore it either. Two incompatible realities generating friction. And Saitama, standing in his apartment, felt that friction like nails on a chalkboard that only he could hear. "Annoying," he muttered. He walked to his closet, pulled out his hero costume. Yellow suit. Red gloves and boots. White cape. Ridiculous, but civilian clothes got destroyed in fights, and replacing them was expensive. The wrongness came from a specific direction. Not compass bearing, just direction. Somewhere else, trying to be here. He stepped outside. Sky seemed normal, blue, clouds. A bird flew past, but there at perception's edge, something rippled, not visible, not audible. The kind of thing he'd learned to sense after breaking his limiter. A disturbance in how reality held together. Most wouldn't notice. Most heroes wouldn't register it. But Saitama had destroyed causality before a punch through time during his fight with Garou. His body remembered what bent universe felt like. This felt similar. A crack opened 3 blocks ahead. Not a portal, not an explosion, just a crack. Like reality had been glass all along. Saitama stopped, studied it. It pulsed, growing. Through the crack he saw wrongness, multiplicity, chaos pretending to be order. Behind him, civilians screamed and ran. Smart. When weird things appeared in City Z, running was correct. Saitama approached, curious. He'd seen strange things. Aliens claiming to rule the universe. Monsters regenerating from single cells. Psychics moving continents, none impressive after the first seconds. This didn't feel like a fight. It felt like a mistake. Like someone broke something important and consequences were leaking through. The crack widened. Saitama stood 3 feet away, mildly annoyed. Not afraid, not excited, annoyed. This meant missing the Tuesday discount. Eggs wouldn't be on sale until next week. He stared at the crack, expressionless. Could ignore it, get eggs anyway. Deal with this later. But the feeling wouldn't go away. And if this got bigger, it might threaten the supermarket. Inconvenient. Saitama stepped forward, approaching the rift with casual attitude. No dramatic pose, no battle cry, no internal monologue about duty or justice. Just a bald man in a yellow suit walking toward the impossible because it was in his way. The crack pulsed, stabilized into something like a doorway. Through it, red sky. Buildings that couldn't decide which version to be. Screaming static of a universe eating itself. He looked at it for a long moment, then stepped through. Standing around thinking had never been his style. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, the null time residue registered his presence. Registered something that shouldn't exist in any framework it understood. Registered an error worse than itself. In the watchtower, Martian Manhunter's telepathic senses suddenly blazed with warning. Something new had entered the equation. Something his vast consciousness couldn't categorize. "Batman, he said quietly. "We have company." "What kind?" Batman asked from Gotham, still watching reality dissolve around him. John paused, searching for words that wouldn't sound insane. "I don't know," he admitted finally. "But it doesn't belong. Not to our universe. Not to any universe I can identify. It just is." In City Z, the cracks sealed behind Saitama, leaving no trace it had ever existed. And in Gotham, standing on a street that couldn't remember which decade it was, a man in a ridiculous yellow costume appeared out of nowhere, looked around at the chaos, and spoke his first words in the DC universe. "Where's the supermarket?" Batman saw him materialize 3 blocks from Crime Alley. Not teleport, not phase in. Just suddenly there, as if reality had retroactively decided this man had always been standing there. Adult male. Average height build. No visible weapons, no armor. A cape that looked decorative. The outfit screamed either complete amateur or beyond conventional assessment. His scanner activated automatically. The device shut down, not crashed, not overwhelmed. It politely declined to process data that made no sense. Batman tried restart. The scanner stayed dark, full charge, all systems nominal. The device functioned perfectly, except it refused to scan the man in yellow. He filed that and approached on foot. The stranger stood motionless, looking around with mild confusion. Not fear, not concern, just someone who'd walked into the wrong store. Around them, reality continued breaking down. A building existed in 3 construction states. Street signs changed languages. Sky shifted between day and night. The man in yellow didn't seem to notice. Batman stopped 10 feet away. "Who are you?" The stranger turned, noticing him for the first time. Something profoundly ordinary about his face. No distinguishing features, no scars, just a face simplified to bare minimum. "Saitama," he said, Voice flat. No inflection. Is this not the supermarket? Batman parsed the question. This is Gotham City. What universe are you from? The regular one. There's no such thing as a regular universe. Okay. The man didn't care about the distinction. He looked around, registered the temporal chaos. Is your city always like this? No. Reality breakdown. Bad time to visit. Ah. Saitama nodded, expressionless. That explains the weird feeling. Batman's jaw tightened. This wasn't adding up. The man showed no signs of distress, no reaction to the crisis unfolding around them. Either he was in shock, which Batman doubted, or he genuinely didn't comprehend the severity of the situation. Or worse, he comprehended it perfectly and simply didn't care. I need you to come with me to the watchtower, Batman said, keeping his voice level. We need to understand how you got here and whether you're connected to the disturbance. Saitama considered this for a moment. Is there food at this watchtower? What? Food. I haven't eaten since breakfast. Batman stared at him. The multiverse was collapsing. Reality itself was coming apart. And this man wanted to know about meal options. Before he could respond, his communicator activated. Superman's voice strained. Batman status report. The expansion just accelerated. Confirmed. I have a new variable. Unknown individual arrived through what appears to be a dimensional breach. Running assessment now. Can you contain him? Batman looked at Saitama, who was now studying a building that kept phasing between being a brownstone and a modern high-rise. The man reached out, poked the structure with one finger as if testing whether it was solid. I don't know, Batman admitted. That admission felt like swallowing glass. Bruce Wayne had contingencies for Superman, for Wonder Woman, for beings that could reshape reality. But those contingencies all relied on one fundamental assumption, that he could understand what he was dealing with. He didn't understand this. In the watchtower, Martian Manhunter reached telepathically toward Gotham, toward the blank spot in the cosmos. He touched Saitama's mind carefully. Grocery lists, not metaphorical. Actual lists. Eggs on sale Tuesday. Instant ramen cheap kind. Kelp. Joan pushed deeper, looking for layers beneath. Hidden motives. True nature. Every mind had depths, complexities, buried secrets. Saitama's mind was exactly as deep as its surface. No hidden trauma, no buried rage, no dark corners. Just a man thinking about groceries. Most disturbing thing John had ever encountered. His mind is, he paused, ordinary, completely impossibly ordinary. That's not possible, Batman said. No one appears in a multiversal crisis with a completely ordinary mind. Nevertheless, no deception, no hidden agenda. He's exactly what he appears to be, which is a man who wants to buy eggs. Batman closed the connection. Your universe. What's it like? Normal, Saitama answered. Sometimes monsters attack. I punch them. And you're a hero. I'm on the registry. Doesn't pay much. Professional hero. Registered. That suggested organization framework. What's your power source? Power source? How did you gain abilities? Mutation, technology, magic. Saitama looked at him like he'd asked what color air was. Training. Training. 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats. 10-kilometer run, every day for 3 years. Batman waited for more. It didn't come. That's it. That's it. That's not how human biology works. Worked for me. The casual certainty was more unnerving than any threat. Not boasting, not delusion, statement of fact delivered like describing weather. Batman pulled up his gauntlet display, tried one more scan. The device showed a reading, then defaulted to error. He caught a glimpse. Power level estimation exceeded notation. That shouldn't be possible. His scanner measured planet movers, space-time warpers. If it couldn't process this man, either the equipment was failing worse than he thought, or Saitama existed on a scale it hadn't been designed to comprehend. Can you help us? With what? The reality breakdown, the thing destroying our universe. Saitama looked around. actually considered it. Buildings phasing through states, people trapped in loops, causality unraveling. Sure. What do you need me to do? Simple agreement. No questions about payment, no demands, no heroic speech, just casual acceptance like being asked to help move furniture. We don't know yet. Every direct approach failed. The phenomenon doesn't respond to conventional force. Okay, I'll punch it anyway. That's your solution. Usually works. Before Batman could respond, the null time residue surged. Not toward them, just expanding another pulse of temporal chaos, spreading through Gotham's streets. A wave of multiplicity crashed against their position. Batman braced, felt reality shift around him. Felt timelines trying to split him into contradictory versions. Felt causality attempting to delete his present by rewriting his past. Then it stopped. Not because the wave had passed. It stopped because Saitama was standing in front of him, one hand raised, like he was blocking wind. The residue hit Saitama and couldn't proceed. Didn't bounce off. Didn't get absorbed. Just stopped as if it had encountered something it had no idea how to process. Batman stared. What did you just do? Saitama lowered his hand, looking at his palm like it might have an explanation. I don't know. It tried to do something. I didn't let it. You didn't let it? Yeah. How? Saitama shrugged again. I just didn't. Martian Manhunter's voice crackled through the comm, urgent. Batman, the residue just encountered resistance. Real resistance. It's not adapting. It's not flowing around. It's just stopped. I see it, Batman said quietly. He looked at Saitama, at this ordinary man in a ridiculous costume who had just done what Superman, Flash, and Wonder Woman combined couldn't do. Who had stopped a force that consumed the concept of order by simply declining to be affected. Not through power, not through cosmic authority, through sheer, inexplicable refusal to acknowledge that the rules applied to him. Saitama, Batman said carefully, I think we need to run some tests. Will there be food after? Yes. Okay. And just like that, the most dangerous variable in a multiversal crisis agreed to cooperate because someone had promised him lunch. Batman activated his communicator. John, prepare the watchtower for a guest. And tell Superman we might have found something. Found what? Batman looked at Saitama, who was back to studying the temporal chaos with the interest of someone watching paint dry. I have no idea, he admitted. But whatever he is, the null time residue can't touch him. In the collapsing streets of Gotham, surrounded by the death of coherent reality, Batman stood next to a man who shouldn't exist and felt something he hadn't felt since the crisis began. Not hope exactly, but possibility. The kind of possibility that came from watching all your assumptions break down and discovering that maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what you needed. The watchtower materialized around them in teleportation light. Saitama looked around the observation deck. Stars in every direction. Earth below, blue and white, currently experiencing catastrophic timeline fragmentation. Huh, Saitama said. Space. Superman stood waiting, arms crossed. Assessing. Clark Kent had spent decades evaluating threats. His eyes narrowed. Yellow suit. Ridiculous cape. Average build that shouldn't register as anything more than civilian, except Superman's senses screamed contradictions. No heartbeat variation, no micro-expressions. Body temperature exactly average. And beneath that normalcy, something his Kryptonian biology couldn't parse. Not energy, not power. Just presence dense and incomprehensible. This is him, Superman asked. This is him, Batman confirmed. Flash arrived in a blur, though the speed force remained unstable. The guy who stopped the residue. I didn't stop it, Saitama said. It just didn't work on me. Barry studied him, running calculations. Average height, no enhancements, homemade costume. Yet when Flash tried perceiving him through the speed force, there was nothing. Not absence. Just disconnect, like Saitama existed outside the stream of causality. How is that possible? Saitama shrugged. Wonder Woman entered last, sword still drawn, held at the angle that wouldn't strike backward through time. Hours maintaining that position. Her eyes met Saitama's. She saw nothing suggesting combat capability. No stance, no tactical awareness, no recognition of weapons or threat. Just a man with vague attention. "Diana," Superman said quietly. "Lower the sword." The temporal loop collapsed when the residue hit resistance. She tested it carefully. Reality didn't fracture. The Themyscira remained intact. She sheathed the God Killer. "Thank you," she said to Saitama. He blinked. "For what?" "Your presence stopped the expansion." "Oh, okay." Not rudeness. Genuine incomprehension that he'd done anything worth thanking. Martian Manhunter phased through the wall. "The residue has stabilized. Not receding, but no longer expanding." Stabilized how? It's attempting to process him. The residue makes reality experience all versions simultaneously. But with Saitama, it can't determine which versions exist. There's only one, just him. No alternates, no contradictions to exploit. "Everyone has alternate timelines," Flash said. "Basic multiverse theory." "Not him." Joan looked at Saitama with something approaching awe. His timeline is singular, linear, unchangeable. Superman's jaw tightened. "That's not how free will works." I didn't say it made sense. Saitama, oblivious, was looking at the cafeteria section. "Is that food?" "Emergency rations," Batman said. "But..." Saitama walked to the supply cabinets, selecting items based on apparent price comparison. The League watched him rummage through protein bars. "He's not taking this seriously," Wonder Woman observed. "He doesn't understand what's at stake," Superman agreed. Batman said nothing. He was watching Saitama's movements. Casual, unhurried, no wasted motion. The kind of efficiency that came from either complete incompetence or such overwhelming competence that concern became irrelevant, given that the man had stopped a multiversal threat by declining to acknowledge it. Batman was betting on the latter. "We need to test his capabilities," Superman said. "Understand what we're dealing with." "I can hear you," Saitama said from across the room, still reading nutrition labels. "Good," Superman replied. "Would you be willing to demonstrate your abilities?" Saitama turned protein bar in hand. "Like what?" "Combat assessment, strength test, standard procedure for any new arrival." "Will it take long?" "These are all expired by 2 months." Flash let out a short laugh before catching himself. Superman's expression didn't change. "It won't take long," Clark said. They relocated to the training deck, reinforced to withstand superhuman sparring. Saitama stood center, hands in pockets, no stance. "Ready?" Superman asked. "For what?" "Testing your durability. Brace yourself." "Okay." Superman moved forward, pulling his punch to 1/10 strength. His fist connected with Saitama's chest. Nothing happened. The punch simply stopped, as if hitting something infinitely dense. Kinetic energy didn't transfer. Just ceased. Clark pulled back. "Did you absorb the impact?" "I don't know. You hit me, I'm still here." Wonder Woman stepped forward. "May I try?" Diana struck with the flat of her blade at half strength. The God Killer bounced off Saitama's shoulder like tapping bedrock. Full strength. The blade rang like a bell. Saitama didn't move. "Interesting costume material. What's it made from?" "Regular fabric. I got it at a discount store." Flash phased his hand to intangibility, attempted passing through. His hand stopped at Saitama's shoulder. "That's not possible. I can phase through anything with mass." "I do have mass," Saitama confirmed. "Then why can't I phase through you?" Saitama looked at his hand. "Maybe because I'm here." The answer was so nonsensical that no one knew how to respond. Batman pulled up his datapad, running calculations. Joan analysis. Martian Manhunter extended his awareness, trying to perceive what his teammates couldn't. He's not blocking, not resisting. He's just being. And his state of being is apparently more fundamental than the forces being applied to him. "That violates every law of physics," Superman said. "Yes," John agreed, "it does." Superman reassessed. How did you survive your training regimen? 100 push-ups, sit-ups, squats, 10-kilometer run. That's barely enough to maintain fitness. It worked, though. What was the mechanism? I kept doing it until I got stronger, then kept doing it. You never plateaued. No, that's not how muscle development works. There's a theoretical ceiling. I did, though, Batman interrupted. Other factors, radiation modification artifacts. I lost my hair. Silence. You lost your hair. Yeah, around the 2-year mark. And you connected that to your power increase. It happened at the same time. That's not how cause and effect works, Flash said. It's what happened. Wonder Woman stepped back. He's not lying. He genuinely believes this. Impossible, Superman said. Batman showed data from Gotham. The residue stopped when he arrived. His presence creates a zone where its mechanics don't function. Martian Manhunter spoke carefully. His mind shows no awareness of being special, no ego. He genuinely sees himself as ordinary. He just withstood building leveling strikes. He knows he's strong. He knows he can punch things and they break. But he doesn't internalize it as remarkable. There's no narrative weight. Batman's eyes narrowed. Narrative weight. Every hero has a story, an arc, weakness to strength. Saitama has none. He trained, became strong. Complete story, no transformation. Everyone has a story. He doesn't. That's why the residue can't affect him. It feeds on narrative complexity contradictions between versions. He has no versions. Just the single linear fact of existence. The implications settled over the room like cold water. Superman looked at Saitama, who had found a water dispenser. So what do we do with him? We use him, Batman said. Position him strategically, create stable areas, buy time. You want to use him as a walking shield. I want to save Earth. Saitama turned cup in hand. You said something about using me. Would you stay in our universe temporarily? Your presence stabilizes the breakdown. Will it take long? I don't know. Saitama sipped. I should probably get back. My rent is due Thursday. Your rent? Yeah, and the Hero Association. They dock points if you don't report. The disconnect was staggering. Multiversal collapse versus rental obligations. We can compensate you. Pay your rent. Handle your requirements. How much? Batman named a figure covering a year's rent. Saitama's eyes widened slightly. That much? That much? Okay, I'll stay. The variable that might save the multiverse agreed, because the pay was good. This is insane, Superman said. Yes, but it's working. John monitor the residue. Flash map stable zones. Diana coordinate with other leagues. We have a window. They moved to stations. Saitama finished his water. So what do I do now? Batman looked at this ordinary man who had broken every rule by refusing to acknowledge them. For now, nothing. Just be here. Apparently that's enough. Saitama nodded, found a chair, sat down. The watchtower gained its most powerful defense through the simple presence of a man who had never tried to be powerful at all. The null-time residue had consumed 17% of prime Earth's surface by the time Batman deployed Saitama. Not violently, not with malice. It simply spread a slow-motion apocalypse that made reality forget how to be consistent. Cities existed in multiple configurations simultaneously. People lived and died and lived again in contradictory loops. Causality ate itself from the inside out. The Justice League had managed containment. Barely. Superman maintained a perimeter around Metropolis through sheer physical presence, his Kryptonian biology serving as an anchor point. Wonder Woman held the line in Washington, with divine will alone. Flash ran himself to exhaustion, keeping Central City's timeline from splintering completely. It wasn't enough. They were holding back the ocean with their hands. Then Saitama arrived in Gotham. Batman watched from the Batmobile monitoring readings that shouldn't exist. The moment Saitama set foot in Crime Alley, the residue stopped advancing. Not retreating, not adapting. Just stopped like water encountering a wall it couldn't comprehend. Readings temperament, Superman asked over the comm. Inconclusive, Batman replied. The sensors can't decide if he's blocking the phenomenon or if the phenomenon simply doesn't recognize him as something it can affect. That doesn't make sense. Nothing about this makes sense. Saitama stood in the center of the street, hands in his pockets, looking around at the chaos with the interest of someone observing construction work. Buildings phased through architectural styles. Street signs cycled through languages that hadn't been invented yet. The skies showed 3 different times of day, layered over each other like bad compositing. He walked forward. The residue pulled back, not dramatically, not like something fleeing. It simply wasn't where Saitama was creating a bubble of stable reality around him as he moved. A 15-foot radius of normalcy in a world that had forgotten what normal meant. "Are you seeing this?" Flash asked from Central City. "Confirmed, I'm announced," Batman said. "He's creating a zone of temporal stability just by existing in proximity to the distortion." Martian Manhunter's telepathic voice touched their minds. It's not defense. The residue is attempting to process him and failing. It can't make him experience multiple versions of himself because there are no other versions to access. Saitama stopped walking, looked up at the fractured sky. "This is pretty weird," he said to no one in particular. Then he reached out and touched the distortion. Every alarm in the Batmobile screamed warnings. Batman's hand went to the emergency beacon that would teleport Saitama back to the watchtower before whatever was about to happen could kill him. Nothing happened. Saitama's hand passed into the zone of temporal chaos, the place where reality experienced every possible configuration at once, where matter and energy and consciousness broke down into contradictory states. His hand remained a hand, singular, solid, unchanged. He pulled it back, examined his palm like he'd dipped it in paint. "Feels tingly." "Tingly," Batman repeated flatly. "Yeah, like when your foot falls asleep." Superman's voice carried genuine disbelief. He just put his hand into a phenomenon that erases causal consistency and described it as tingly. "He's not wrong," Manhunter said. "I'm reading the interaction. The residue is trying to split his hand into every version that could exist. Every scar he might have gotten, every injury, every alteration. It's failing because his physical form refuses to acknowledge alternate states." How, Wonder Woman asked. "I don't know. His body exists in a state of absolute certainty about what it is. The residue can't create ambiguity where none exists." Saitama looked at Batman's position, waved. "Should I keep walking?" Batman made a decision that went against every tactical instinct he'd honed over decades. "Yes. Walk into the center of the distortion." "Bruce," Superman said, "we don't know what will happen. We know what's happening now isn't working. He's the only variable that's shown any resistance. We need to test the limits." Saitama shrugged and started walking again. The bubble of stability moved with him, a pocket of coherent reality carved through temporal chaos. He walked past a building that couldn't decide which decade it was from. The moment he passed, it settled into a single state. Not the newest version, not the oldest. Just one version, solid and real. "It's repairing causality in his wake," Flash breathed. "Not perfectly, but better than it was." Batman pulled up comparative readings. Flash was right. The area Saitama had walked through showed reduced temporal variance. The residue hadn't receded, but it had lost complexity, forced into simpler configurations by proximity to something it couldn't process. Saitama reached what Batman's instruments identified as the densest concentration of the distortion. Ground zero, where the residue was thickest, where reality had given up entirely and existed as pure possibility without form. He stopped, looked around. It's really messy here. Then he did something that made Batman question whether the man understood danger at all. He sat down, not defensively, not in preparation for combat. He just sat down cross-legged in the middle of the temporal storm, like someone taking a break during a walk. The residue surged around him, trying to find a way in a crack in his existence it could exploit, trying to make him experience being in multiple places at once, Multiple ages, multiple states of being. Saitama scratched his head, disrupting the attack like swatting a fly. "This is going to take a while, isn't it?" he said. Batman's tactical computer ran projections. If Saitama remained stationary, the residue would eventually have to either adapt retreat or exhaust its attempts to affect him. Current estimates suggested months of standoff. They didn't have months. "Saitama," Batman said. "Can you push it back?" "Push what back?" "The distortion. The temporal anomaly. Can you force it to recede?" Saitama considered this, looking at the chaos swirling around his bubble of stability. "I don't know. It's not really a thing I can punch." "Why not?" "It doesn't have a shape. It's just there." "But you can touch it." "Yeah, then hit it." Saitama looked skeptical. "I don't think that'll work." "Try anyway." He stood up, brushed off his cape, raised one fist. No dramatic wind-up. No gathering of power. Just a normal punch, the kind you might throw at a heavy bag in a gym. His fist connected with the residue. The phenomenon rippled, not like something struck, like something confused. The temporal distortion pulled back from the point of impact, creating a void where Saitama's punch had landed. Not because he destroyed it, because it had encountered force applied with such absolute certainty that it didn't know how to exist in the same space. Saitama lowered his fist, frowned. "Huh. That kind of worked." "Again," Batman ordered. He punched again. Same casual motion, same result. Another void in the residue, another space where causality suddenly remembered how to function normally. "It's retreating," Superman said. "Not far, but it's actually moving away from him." Batman watched the readings, calculating. It's not retreat. It's reconfiguration. The residue exists by making everything experience all versions simultaneously. But wherever he punches it, can't maintain that state. It has to simplify or cease to exist in that location. "So we use him as a weapon," Wonder Woman said. "No." Manhunter's voice was troubled. "Look at the energy readings. He's not destroying it. He's forcing it to choose. To be one thing instead of all things. That's not how you defeat the residue. That's how you make it more dangerous." Batman's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "The residue feeds on complexity, on contradictions. But if we force it to simplify, to condense all that chaotic potential into singular states, we create concentrated nodes of temporal energy. We'd be compressing the problem, not solving it." "Then what do we do?" Flash asked. Saitama, oblivious to the strategic discussion, punched the distortion a third time. This time harder, putting actual effort into it, instead of just testing. The residue screamed, not audibly. But every hero with enhanced senses felt it a spike of wrongness that registered as pain, as dissonance, as reality itself flinching. Saitama pulled back his fist, looking at it with mild concern. That felt weird. The residue was moving now, actively pulling away from him, creating distance. Not defeated, disrupted. For the first time since its emergence, the phenomenon that consumed coherent causality was encountering something more fundamental than itself. It didn't know what to do with him. Batman made a note. The residue is showing avoidance behavior. It's not adapting to his presence. It's trying to exist anywhere except where he is. "Can we use that?" Superman asked. "Possibly. If we position him strategically, we might be able to herd the phenomenon into a confined space. But that doesn't eliminate it, just concentrates it." Saitama was looking around at the receding distortion hands back in his pockets. "So is it over?" "No," Batman said. "It's repositioning." "Oh." Saitama sounded disappointed. "Do I need to keep punching it?" "Not yet. Return to the watchtower. We need to analyze what just happened." The teleportation sequence activated, pulling Saitama out of Gotham in a shimmer of light. The moment he was gone, the residue surged back into the space he'd occupied, reclaiming territory. But Batman noticed something crucial. The areas where Saitama had punched the phenomenon remained clearer than before. Not healed, but less chaotic. like scar tissue on a wound. He can hurt it, Wonder Woman observed. He can confuse it, Batman corrected. There's a difference. In the watchtower, Saitama materialized on the transport pad, looking at his hand again. That was weird. What did it feel like? Manhunter asked, his telepathic senses focused intently on Saitama's mind. Like punching fog, or ideas. Like there wasn't actually anything there to hit, but I hit it anyway. And that didn't concern you. Saitama shrugged. Things are usually tougher than they look. This was the opposite. It looked scary, but didn't feel like much. Superman crossed his arms. It erases causality. It deleted me from 4 seconds of existence. That's not much. Maybe. Saitama looked genuinely thoughtful. But when I punched it, it moved. Things that can move can be beaten. The simplicity of the logic was maddening. But it was also, Batman realized, accurate. The residue had shown vulnerability to Saitama's attacks, even if they didn't understand why. We need a strategy, Batman said. The residue is avoiding him, which means it recognizes him as a threat. We can use that. Use him how? Flash asked. Batman pulled up a holographic projection of Earth, showing the spread of the residue in red. We position Saitama in strategic locations, forcing the phenomenon to compress into smaller areas. Then we try to find a way to contain or neutralize it while it's concentrated. That's using him as bait, Wonder Woman said. That's using our only advantage, Batman countered. Saitama raised his hand. Can I ask something? Everyone turned to him. If I keep hitting it, will it eventually just go away? The question was so straightforward, so divorced from cosmic complexity, that no one knew how to answer. Manhunter spoke carefully. The residue isn't a being. It's a consequence. You can't punch a consequence into non-existence. Have you tried? Saitama asked. That's not how causality works. Okay. But have you tried? The room fell silent. Batman looked at Saitama. At this man who had broken every assumption they'd made, simply by existing in ways reality shouldn't allow, and made another decision that felt insane, but somehow necessary. No, he admitted. We haven't tried. Saitama nodded. Then maybe I should try hitting it harder. Superman opened his mouth to explain why that was absurd. Why you couldn't solve a multiversal crisis through brute force. Why there were rules even strength couldn't break. Then he remembered Saitama's scanner readings. Remembered his own punch stopping dead against the man's chest. Remembered that every rule they'd tried to apply to him had failed. Maybe, Superman said instead the word tasting strange. Maybe you should. And in Gotham, in the zones where Saitama had struck the null time residue with casual force reality, continued to remember itself just a little bit better than before. The error was beginning to understand it had encountered something worse than itself. Something that didn't need to understand the rules to break them. Something that would keep punching until the problem went away, because that was what problems were for. The residue had fed on the complexity of DC's overcorrected universe. Now, it was learning what happened when complexity met absolute simplicity. And simplicity, it turned out, hurt. The null time residue adapted, not quickly, not intelligently. But over 6 hours, as Saitama was deployed across the globe, the phenomenon learned to recognize him. Learned to flow around his presence. Learned to concentrate in spaces between his interventions. Batman watched projections with growing concern. It's not avoiding him anymore. It's using his position against us. The holographic Earth showed red zones of collapse. Where Saitama stood, reality remained stable. But the residue pooled in gaps, compressing, intensifying. How is that possible? It's not conscious. Errors learn to persist, Manhunter said quietly. That's what makes them errors. Superman studied the display. We need to spread him thinner. He's one person, Wonder Woman said. He can't be everywhere. Batman pulled up energy readings. Saitama had punched the residue 47 times in Metropolis. Each strike created temporary voids. But the phenomenon was learning to absorb impacts differently, distribute force across its network. It's adapting to his attacks, Batman said. Not resisting, adapting around them. In the training deck, Saitama sat on a bench drinking water. 8 cities in 6 hours. He looked bored. Superman entered Cape bearing scorch marks from holding Metropolis. We need to talk about escalation. Saitama looked up. Okay. Your attacks are working, but not permanently. The residue is adapting. We need to hit it harder. How much harder? Superman paused. He'd seen the training room crater. Seen the man's hand through reinforced walls. As hard as you can. Saitama considered this. Are you sure things break when I do that? The multiverse is already breaking. We need to break the thing that's breaking it. That doesn't make much sense. Nothing about this makes sense, but you're the only variable showing consistent results. Saitama set down his water bottle. Where do you need me to hit it? Batman's voice came through calm. Ground Zero, Gotham, Crime Alley, densest concentration. If you're testing maximum force, that's the optimal location. Will people get hurt? I've evacuated the area. You have clearance. Saitama stood up, rolled his shoulders. Okay. But I'm not sure this will work. Why not? Because I've never tried to punch something that isn't really there. Try anyway. Gotham materialized around Saitama. Crime Alley looked like nightmare filmed in multiple exposures. Buildings as architectural ghosts stacked through time. The residue was thickest here, concentrated into a sphere of pure temporal chaos, 80 feet in diameter. It pulsed, not breathing, just existing in waves. Saitama walked to the edge. His presence created the usual stability radius. Where he stood, time flowed normally. Everyone clear? Batman said. We're reading energy spikes. Whatever you're planning, do it fast. Saitama looked at the chaos. Thought about people trapped in loops. Thought about heroes exhausting themselves. Thought about how annoying this had become. Then thought about something else. 3 years training. 3 years until his body broke every limit. Strong enough to end any fight with one punch. Strong enough that nothing challenged him. He'd learned to hold back, pull punches, live in a world where full strength only caused problems. This was the first time in years someone asked him not to hold back. Saitama's expression shifted. The casual indifference faded, replaced by something harder. Focused. He pulled his right hand back. In the watchtower, every sensor spiked. What is he doing? Manhunter's senses blazed. He's concentrating. His mind shifted. There's intent now. Purpose. Complete elimination of the target. Batman watched readings climb. Power levels that shouldn't exist. He's not holding back. Superman focused on Crime Alley, seeing through distance. Watched Saitama's fist pull back. Watched muscles contain force that made Superman's strength look quaint. Everyone break, Batman ordered. Saitama spoke 2 words. Serious punch. His fist moved forward. Deliberate. Certain. Absolute commitment. The fist connected. Reality screamed. The fundamental substrate of space-time made a sound forced to choose between chaos and certainty. The residue chose wrong. The sphere didn't explode. It simply stopped being chaos. 80 feet of causal breakdown collapsed into single linear state. One timeline, one configuration. The shockwave wasn't kinetic. It was ontological. Every hero felt it. The universe deciding this piece would stop contradicting itself and commit to being one thing. Buildings locked into single forms. People snapped back into coherent existence. Crime Alley became Crime Alley again. One alley. One reality. The residue was gone. Not dispersed. Gone. Saitama lowered his fist. Huh. That worked better than I thought. In the watchtower, alarms were screaming, not warnings, confirmations. The residue just lost 23% of its total mass. Batman reported, his voice tight with something that might have been hope. Not relocated, eliminated. Whatever he did, it forced the phenomenon to resolve into a stable state. That's not possible, Flash said. You can't punch accumulated errors out of existence. Apparently you can, Superman said quietly. Manhunter extended his senses toward Crime Alley, examining what remained. The area is stable, causally coherent. There's no trace of the residue's influence. It's as if Saitama's punch overrode the phenomenon's fundamental nature and forced it to simplify. Wonder Woman's eyes narrowed. Can he do that again? Batman was already plotting trajectories. If he can eliminate 23% per strike, we need 4 more hits at that level to clear Earth entirely. Assuming the residue doesn't adapt further, Manhunter warned. It's had 6 hours to adapt to his normal attacks, Batman countered. It hasn't found a way to resist his presence. This was an order of magnitude stronger. I don't think it can adapt to something it can't survive. In Crime Alley, Saitama was examining the area where the residue had been. Normal buildings, normal street, normal everything. Batman, can people come back now? Stand by, Batman said. We're analyzing the results. Saitama nodded, then looked at his fist again. The serious punch had felt different than his normal attacks. More complete. Less like hitting fog and more like hitting something solid enough to break. He'd been asked to hit it as hard as he could. That hadn't been as hard as he could, but it had been hard enough to make the problem smaller. And if he could make it smaller 4 more times, the problem would be gone. The logic was simple. The kind of simple that ignored cosmic complexity and universal rules, and just focused on the basic fact that problems stopped being problems when you hit them until they went away. Superman's voice crackled through the comm. Saitama, we're seeing the residue concentrate in 4 major locations. Can you repeat what you just did? Sure, Saitama said, but it's kind of tiring. The admission caught everyone off guard. Saitama, who had shown no fatigue through hours of deployment, who had treated reality-warping chaos like a minor inconvenience, was admitting that the serious punch took effort. How tiring? Batman asked carefully. I don't know. I haven't done it 4 times in a row before. But you can do it 4 more times. Saitama thought about it. Probably. I'm not sure what happens after that. After that? Superman said, the crisis is over. Okay, Saitama agreed. Where do you need me? Batman pulled up coordinates. Metropolis. The residue is pooling there. Then Tokyo, then London, then back to Washington. We'll teleport you between sites. That's a lot of punching. Can you handle it? Saitama's expression shifted again, settling into that harder focus. Not angry, not excited, just decided. Yeah, he said. I can handle it. The teleportation sequence activated, and in 4 locations across Earth, the null-time residue began to learn what happened when accumulated errors encountered someone who didn't care about rules. Someone who would punch the problem until it stopped being a problem. Someone who had finally been given permission to stop holding back. The error was about to discover what serious mode actually meant. And reality broken and contradictory and dying was about to be forced to remember how to be simple again. 1 punch at a time. Metropolis appeared around Saitama. The city Superman had protected for decades was unrecognizable. Buildings existed as probability clouds. The daily planet globe cycled through brass steel shattered non-existent. People moved through streets that couldn't decide on layout. The residue had concentrated here after Gotham's defeat. Learning. Compressing itself into mass so dense that space-time buckled. Saitama looked up at the sphere hovering above Centennial Park. Larger than crime alleys. Denser. Target confirmed, Batman said. The residue is attempting to create stable paradox. It's wrong, Saitama said. He pulled back his fist. Serious punch. The strike landed. The residue tried to absorb it. Tried to distribute certainty across its network of contradictions. It failed. You couldn't dilute absolute. Saitama's punch carried the weight of 3 years breaking limits that shouldn't break. The sphere collapsed. Instantly. Buildings locked into single states. People remembered one timeline. Metropolis sky became blue again. Saitama lowered his fist, breathing slightly harder. 1 down. Superman landed beside him, staring at his restored city. Thank you, Clark said quietly. Saitama nodded, already focusing on the next target. Tokyo materialized. The residue had burrowed into infrastructure. Subway tunnels, fiber optics, invisible networks. Trying to make itself too diffuse, to hit too integrated, to eliminate without destroying the city. The residue embedded itself in Tokyo's systems, Batman reported. It's using the city as shield. Saitama looked at streets where chaos leaked through manholes. Where's the center? Shibuya crossing. But if you strike with full force infrastructure damage, will people die? Batman paused. No, not from the punch itself. Then I'm hitting it. He walked to Shibuya crossing, knelt, placed his palm against pavement. What are you doing? Finding the center. He could feel it. 50 feet down, spread through tunnels like roots. Saitama stood, aimed his fist downward. Serious punch. The strike went down. Through pavement, earth, concrete, and steel. Found the core and forced it to choose chaos or cease. The shockwave erupted upward. Not destructive, corrective. Broken infrastructure snapped back. Tunnels locked into stable states. Saitama pulled back his fist, breathing heavier. Not exhausted, just working. 2 down. Saitama, your energy readings are fluctuating. Are you all right? I'm fine. Just haven't punched this hard in a while. Can you continue? He looked at his hand. No pain, no shake. But he could feel the effort now. Yeah, 2 more. London appeared. The residue hung over the Thames like a storm cloud of contradictory time. Mass so large it blocked the sun. The phenomenon had abandoned subtlety, trying pure size. The residue expanded to maximum volume, Batman said. Saitama looked up at the cloud covering square miles. It pulsed with combined wrongness of every crisis. He pulled back his fist. Every hero watched. They'd seen concentrated nodes eliminated, embedded networks purged. Now they'd see if certainty could overcome scale. Saitama's expression was focused, but there was tension in his jaw now. Recognition this required full attention. Serious punch. The fist rose upward. The impact was silent for 1 second. Then reality remembered sound. The boom was clarification. The universe stating this space would contain 1 timeline, 1 state, 1 London. The residue's size met Saitama's refusal to acknowledge size as defense. The cloud collapsed inward. Square miles reduced to coherent reality in 3 seconds. London's sky was blue again. Saitama lowered his fist, breathing hard. Sweat on his head, catching restored sunlight. 3. 1 more. Can you do 1 more? Saitama tested his body. Strength wasn't depleted, but the serious punch drew from something deeper. Will. Certainty. Conviction the problem would end, because he decided it would. That certainty was harder to maintain on the 4th attempt. Yeah, 1 more. Washington appeared. The residue had collapsed into a singularity. A point no larger than a marble, containing every version of itself simultaneously. That's not possible, Asasto, Batman said. Energy density off scale. If you strike that, the release could affect the entire multiverse. Will it fix the problem? It might. Or make it worse. We don't know what happens when you force a paradox singularity to resolve. Saitama looked at the point hovering above the Washington Monument. Tiny. Containing the final remnant. He thought about heroes exhausted. People trapped. How the League tried everything and failed because the problem didn't respond to knowledge. It responded to him. To simple, stubborn refusal to let problems continue. I'm hitting it. Saitama, wait. He pulled back his fist. Slower than the previous 3. Not from weakness, from deliberation. This was the 4th, the one he'd never done, the one drawing from untested reserves. But the target was small. And Saitama had trained 3 years to hit exactly what he aimed at. His fist pulled back to limit. In the watchtower, alarms screamed. Monitors watched with horror and fascination. The Spectre witnessed someone about to punch accumulated consequence until it ceased. Serious punch. His fist moved forward. The impact was absolute, not loud, just final. The singularity tried to maintain paradoxical state. Tried to prove contradiction could survive certainty if compressed enough. It couldn't. The point detonated. Not explosive. Expansive. Not outward, but across. The temporal shockwave spread through the multiverse, and everywhere it touched, it simplified. Contradictory timelines locked into single states. Rewritten histories chose final versions. The bleed sealed itself. The multiverse didn't reset. It just remembered how to be consistent. Saitama lowered his fist. His arm shook. Not from damage, from effort. 4 serious punches in sequence. He'd done it. The problem had stopped being a problem. Saitama sat down on the Washington Monument steps, breathing hard, looking at his hand. "Is it done?" he asked. Batman's voice came through, carrying something that might have been awe. "Yes, it's done. The residue is gone. Earth is stable. The multiverse is coherent again." "Good," Saitama said, "because I don't think I can do that again today." The admission was matter of fact, not weakness, just honesty. He'd found a limit, not to his strength, but to how many times he could force the universe to bend in one day. Superman landed beside him, cape billowing. "You saved us. Saved everyone." Saitama looked up at him, expression returning to its usual flatness now that the crisis was over. "I just punched it until it went away." That's not Superman stopped. Because that was exactly what Saitama had done. No strategy beyond mud hit it until it stops. No cosmic understanding. Just brute certainty applied 4 times in succession. And it had worked. Wonder Woman touched down on Saitama's other side. "Rest. You've earned it." "Okay," Saitama said. "Is there still food at the watchtower?" Despite everything. Despite the cosmic implications of what had just occurred. Wonder Woman smiled. "Yes, there's food." "Good, I'm really hungry now." The teleportation sequence activated, pulling Saitama back to the watchtower. Back to the simple concerns of food and rest after hard work. Behind him, Earth began to heal. Cities remembered their proper forms. People woke from contradictory dreams. Time flowed forward again, singular and simple. The Justice League had failed to save their world, and a man in a yellow suit had saved it by refusing to acknowledge that failure was possible, by punching the problem 4 times, by being exactly as simple as he appeared to be. The hole in reality had been filled, not by cosmic entities, not by divine intervention, not by heroes following rules, but by someone who had never learned those rules in the first place. And in the spaces between universes where the monitors kept their vigil, a new notation appeared in the files for Universe X7721. Recommend continued observation. Classification updated dangerous anomaly. Approach with caution. Do not engage. The error was gone, but the anomaly remained. And the DC multiverse would never quite forget the day physics gave up trying to explain him. The Watchtower cafeteria had never felt so quiet. Saitama sat at a table working through his 3rd protein bar. 4 consecutive strikes left him with an appetite he hadn't felt in years. Around him, the Justice League worked in controlled chaos. Flash coordinated with emergency services. Wonder Woman liaised with governments. Superman helped people reorient to linear time. Batman stood at the observation window staring at Earth. Normal again. Blue oceans, white clouds. No red zones. Fixed. By a man eating protein bars. Analysis complete, Martian Manhunter said. The residue is completely eliminated. No trace signatures. Casualties? None. The shockwave was corrective, not destructive. Some confusion, some memory inconsistencies, but no deaths. Structural damage? Minimal. Infrastructure restored to coherent states. Batman turned from the window. "We need to debrief him." "Will that help?" "It might prevent this from happening again. His capability isn't based on understanding. It's based on something we don't have a framework for." Batman's jaw tightened. He didn't like admitting there were things beyond analysis. But John was right. Superman entered. "The last displaced civilians are accounted for. No one permanently lost." "Good," Batman said. "Then we can begin cleanup. Already coordinating. Damage extensive but manageable." Superman's eyes drifted to Saitama. We should talk to him before he goes back. The three heroes approached. Saitama looked up, still chewing. How are you feeling? Saitama swallowed. Tired, hungry, my arm's a little sore. Just a little. Yeah, it'll be fine tomorrow. Superman sat across from him. What you did saved billions, possibly trillions across the multiverse. You should know that. Saitama nodded. Okay. Does that mean anything to you? Saitama thought about it. I mean, it's good people aren't dying. That's why I became a hero. But you don't seem affected by the scale. Should I be? Most heroes would be. The weight of that many lives. I just punched the thing causing problems. It stopped. I don't know what else there is to feel about it. The honesty was so complete, Superman found himself without response. Batman stepped forward. We need to understand your capabilities for future reference. You want to know how strong I am, among other things. I don't know. Strong enough? Strong enough for what? For whatever I need to punch. And if you encounter something stronger, that hasn't happened yet. But theoretically, I'll just punch it harder. The circular logic was maddening. But Batman recognized it not stupidity, but a fundamentally different approach. Saitama didn't strategize because he'd never needed to. Wonder Woman joined them. Saitama, you have our gratitude. You're welcome. If you ever need anything you need, only ask. Saitama considered this. Actually, can someone explain how to get back home? We'll arrange transport, Batman said. A few hours. Okay. Can I sleep until then? There are rooms available. Take as much time as you need. Saitama stood stretched. He looked at the assembled Justice League and spoke with absolute sincerity. Thanks for letting me help. This was kind of interesting. Kind of interesting, Flash repeated, arriving in a blur. You punched reality back into shape, and it was kind of interesting. Yeah, I haven't had to try that hard in a while. It was good. Saitama headed toward the crew quarters, done with the conversation. The Justice League watched him go. He's going to sleep, Wonder Woman said. After saving the multiverse, he's going to take a nap. That's very much in character, Martian Manhunter observed. Batman pulled up his datapad, began documenting what little could be documented. We need protocols. In case he returns. In case others like him exist. There aren't others like him, John said quietly. I've scanned the multiverse through the telepathic network. He's unique, not just rare, singular. You can't know that for certain. I can. His mind has no echoes, no alternates, no versions in other realities. He's the only Saitama that exists across all possible configurations. That's not normal. That's not how consciousness works in a multiverse. Superman leaned against the table, the weight of the day finally settling on his shoulders. So, what do? We let him sleep, Batman said. Then we send him home, and we make sure our records reflect what happened here accurately. Which is what exactly? Flash asked. That we failed and someone who doesn't understand physics saved us by punching too hard. Essentially, that's a terrible report. It's an accurate report. Wonder Woman sheathed her sword completely, the motion final. Perhaps that's the lesson. Not every problem has a dignified solution. Sometimes you just need someone willing to punch it until it breaks. That's not philosophy, Superman said. That's brute force. Today, brute force was philosophy. They stood in silence, processing that. In the crew quarters, Saitama found a bed, lay down, without removing his costume, and was asleep in 30 seconds. No nightmares. No processing trauma. No existential crisis about the weight of what he'd accomplished. Just sleep. Deep and dreamless. The sleep of someone who'd done hard work and was tired. In the Watchtower, the Justice League continued their cleanup operations. Coordinated with global authorities, filed reports, managed the aftermath of the crisis that had nearly ended everything. They did what heroes do, finish the job even after the dramatic moment has passed. And tomorrow they would send Saitama home, back to his small apartment, back to his grocery store discounts, back to a life where punching monsters was routine and multiversal threats were just Tuesday. The Justice League would remember him. would debate his existence, his capabilities, his fundamental impossibility. But Saitama would probably just remember the protein bars tasted bad, and the bed was comfortable. Because that was who he was. And the DC multiverse, for all its complexity and cosmic significance, had been saved by someone who simply didn't think in those terms. Batman made a final note in his log. Recommend diplomatic relations with Universe X7721. Potential ally. Approach with humility. Then he closed the file and went back to work. There was always work to do, even after someone else had already solved the impossible problem, especially then. 6 hours later, Saitama woke up feeling better. The arm soreness had faded. The fatigue had settled into pleasant tiredness. He sat up stretched, realized he was still wearing his costume. Through the window, Earth below. Blue and stable, no red zones, just a planet going about its business. He found the cafeteria. Batman was waiting with a tablet. We've prepared the dimensional gateway. Same coordinates as your arrival point. Will I end up in the same place? City Z, approximately 3 meters from where you left. Good. I need to check on my apartment. Batman looked at Saitama with something close to respect. Before you go, if something like this happens again, would you help? Saitama thought about it. Probably, if I'm not busy. Not busy? Yeah, or if the pay is good enough. Batman almost smiled. We compensated you. Funds should transfer within 48 hours. Thanks. Superman arrived. You're leaving? Yeah, I should get back before my landlord thinks I skipped rent. Clark extended his hand. Saitama shook it. The grip was careful. Superman had learned not to test strength. Thank you for everything. You're welcome. Wonder Woman and Flash joined them. The greatest heroes of Prime Earth, seeing off a man in a yellow suit. The gateway is ready, Batman said. They walked to the transport bay. The dimensional gateway shimmered, controlled and precise. Batman's work. Step through when ready, Batman instructed. Saitama approached the portal, paused, turned back. Hey, Batman, those protein bars were really bad. Batman's lip twitched. I'll note that. Saitama nodded. Then looked at the others. Thanks for the food and the place to sleep, and for letting me help. It was interesting. Interesting, Flash repeated quietly. Saitama, Superman called. In our world we have a saying. Not all heroes wear capes. Saitama looked down at his white cape, confused. But I do wear a cape. I know, Superman said, warmth in his voice. That's what makes it funny. Saitama shrugged, decided it was probably a cultural thing, and stepped through the gateway. City Z materialized around him, his apartment building, his street, the ramen shop 2 blocks down. Everything exactly as he'd left it. Saitama headed to his apartment, fishing for keys. The door opened to his small space. Cracked ceiling, flickering light. Stack of manga. Normal. He took off his costume, hung it, checked his phone. 3 missed calls from Genos. 2 messages about hero rankings. 1 notification about Tuesday grocery sales. He set an alarm for the next morning. Training routine to maintain. 100 push-ups, sit-ups, squats. 10-kilometer run every day, no matter what. Rent was due in 5 days, but Batman's payment would transfer in 48 hours. That would work out. Saitama lay down staring at the cracked ceiling. Thought about the past day, the rift, the collapsing universe, the heroes who'd tried everything and failed. The problem he'd solved by hitting it 4 times. It had been interesting, actually challenging. The 4th punch had required real effort. He'd found a limit not to his strength, but to how many times he could force that certainty in 1 day. Good to know. He closed his eyes. In the DC multiverse, the Justice League would spend months analyzing what happened. Would debate implications. Would try to understand the incomprehensible. But Saitama had already moved on, because that was Tuesday, and tomorrow would be Wednesday. And on Wednesday, the grocery store had a sale on eggs. The DC multiverse had encountered an anomaly. The anomaly had solved their problem, and now the anomaly was back home thinking about grocery shopping. Reality had been saved by someone who cared more about protein bar quality than cosmic significance. And somewhere in the spaces between universes, the monitors added one final note. Subject returned to origin universe. Gateway sealed. Recommend leave him alone. The crisis was over. The anomaly had gone home. And the DC multiverse had learned a simple lesson. Sometimes the answer to an impossible problem is someone too simple to know it's impossible. Someone who will just keep punching until the problem goes away. The Justice League would remember this day for the rest of their lives. Saitama would remember it until he found his next actual challenge. And that perhaps was the most honest ending. The hole in reality had been filled. The heroes had finished their job. And Saitama went grocery shopping on Wednesday because eggs were on sale. Because that was who he was. Just another Tuesday. Just another crisis. Just another punch. The end.